are literally thousands of books that talk about the theory of strategy. Most books kind of still leave you hanging.
I remember somebody once telling me, if you move the people, you move the needle. And that's what this book is about.
And I would recommend it to anyone who wants to enhance their practice of strategic management. It is one piece of literature that is recommended for all.
I think this book have three very important components: strategy development, business management to get a better result, and engage the key stakeholder. There are few books can really put these three parts together and have a very clear process to understand.
This is a book for people who actually need to grow businesses, scale businesses, make businesses more efficient, move into new countries, new product lines, whatever the case may be, and understand how to get that across the line and execute.
You need the right strategy, but even more importantly, you need the right people. So it's the right people, the right strategies, that deadly combination that optimize success, optimize results, and get you the outcome that you're looking for. And that's what this book is all about.
I reached the conclusion that it is quite a pragmatic text to read, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to enhance their practice of strategic management, be it as consultants or even as business leaders.
It provides so many practical tools, but it actually provides us with real life examples of how do we build a strategy canvas? How do we measure KPIs?
It's a masterpiece. It is a work of art to optimize results.
Welcome everybody. I hope you are enjoying your breakfast. Today is a big day, more so for our friends Waima, Price and Bayer. We are launching a very important book, Optimizing Strategy. This book is very important for those of you who run organizations, who are in government, who are in private sector, in terms of understanding what strategy is all about. Like many things that we know, a lot of things originated from the Greeks, and strategy is no different. And so the Greeks, and later on the French and the English, I think the French call strategy, the English calls it stratagem, okay? But we have all discussed this, and now we're calling it strategy. The other thing also about strategy is it is originating from the military, and it is about doing things with order and precision. And I hope this book is going to do a lot of learning. They give us a lot of lessons and learnings on how to do things in an orderly way and with precision. And that is what strategy is all about. The other thing also, if you read about strategy, is it talks about order. Order and tactics are the same. So when you do a strategy, you're supposed to do things in an orderly way, and those are the tactics. And I know a lot of you have gone to Rwanda, and that is what Kagame is implementing, strategy. Don't ask me whether we do it in Kenya. I think you are all Kenyans, most of you, and we are doing this in Kenya, but definitely there is no order. So it means then we are not doing things strategically. And so therefore, Dr. Bayer, we hope one day you will be the president or the governor of Nairobi and do things orderly, because that is where the book is required. So we are here today to discuss issues of strategy. And if we get strategy right, our continent will prosper. Some of the things we probably don't know about our continent, Africa, is one, it is 3 times the size of the US. We are 30 million square kilometers. The US is 9.9. So 3 times. 60% of the remaining arable land in the world is in Africa. We are so rich. The youngest continent in the world is Africa. The average age is 19. Compare it with a country, say, like Germany. The average age in Germany is 50. So it's an aging, country. So the best place for strategy implementation, strategy development, strategy execution is here. And the greatest difference we will make when we execute strategy is here. And today we are launching a book that gives us that background, that synopsis, that approach into making a difference in Africa. Some of you have run institutions that have made incredible difference in Africa. And today we are going to hear from Dr. James Mwangi on strategy execution. When you execute it right, what is the product? And today we'll hear from the story of Equity, what they did right and the difference it has made in a continent like ours. And if we multiply it in scale, you will have a continent that all of us will be proud of, and the Almighty, whoever Charles was speaking about, will say, you did the right thing. So, Charles, that prayer will be answered today when we launch this book, when all of you will be executing strategy wherever you are and making that very difference that we have all been asking for. So we are here, therefore, to make sure that we are celebrating what Ron Price, Evans Bayer, and Timothy Wayama put their heads together and their thoughts together and have given us ideas on how to develop and execute strategy, which is basically order and execution to achieve the goal that you have set for. So we are here to make sure that we achieve that goal. So we are going to begin, ladies and gentlemen, with a round table on the highlights of the book. We are here to get those highlights, and we have 4 honored guests who are going to do this for us, and I'm going to quickly just call them on stage. The first one is Professor Peter Mbidi. Most of you know him, former Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi. And so, Professor Mbidi. The next one is Dr. Vincent Ogutu, Vice Chancellor Designate, Strathmore University. So today all the dons are here. And then the next one is Dr. Charles Porura, from KRA. Charles. And then finally, Millicent Awiti. Millicent, please come. She's the Strategy and Change Manager at NSSF. Welcome, Millicent. So each of them is going to make a small presentation of the highlights, what they have seen in the book. And we will begin with the senior most, of course, Professor Peter Mbidi. Welcome, Professor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have had the opportunity to read this book many, many times. And the first time I went through it, I was more or less mesmerized. And I said, definitely, I endorse what is in this book. And then I continued reading it, and I found reading it very pleasant and very rewarding, because I started seeing reflections of my life and my hopes and aspirations in the contents and the directions that the book was giving. I found it to be excellent and timely. In fact, I wondered a little later where the team had experienced a situation like he did one time. I had an assignment with him in an institution that is a little remote from Nairobi, and we had spent a whole day trying to craft and put in English the mission and vision statement for that institution, and we had failed by 10 p.m. And so we agreed we go to sleep over it, and in the morning at breakfast he asked me, "Did you come up with anything?" I said, "I don't know whether I heard some voice in the wilderness." He said, "Actually, I did hear a voice in the wilderness." I wondered whether, as this book was written, a voice had been heard from somewhere in the global wilderness of business, as COVID was just about imminent. So I looked at the third or fourth time I was reading the book, I looked at the description of VUCA, a world that is volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and so on. And this is what we are going through. And I read the book again. I said, wow, this is going to be what it is. Then I looked again at COVID. We are still in COVID. We are in 2020, 2021, in the thick of it. I'm reading for the fourth time. And I looked at hierarchy and hierarchy. And I saw the impact of hierarchy, which is more strong and useful and impactful than hierarchy. And I watched as hierarchy got dismantled across organizations. A hierarchy became more important. And then, of course, the situational leaders coming in to take charge when the positional leadership was becoming irrelevant. And I said, wow, this again is good in turbulent times. And indeed, we have been in turbulent times. Since I first read this book, we have been 2.5 years in a really turbulent world. I have seen that it's useful even at individual level, just organizing. My good friend Julius just said this order, just organizing oneself, even at family level, community level, and evidently in SMEs and big business, whether private or public. Extremely relevant, easy to read, easily understood, and really ready to be used by anyone to grow business of whatever kind. Having worked with the team and had sessions with Ron Price and my friend Evans here, and shared quite broadly and sometimes specifically, I really think that they have come again to do what they have done in the past for business strategy in the marketplace and also in institutions. I want to congratulate them highly for this very, very good work at a very, very, very turbulent time. Thank you very much.
So when you buy the book, it's easy to read. And it's not written by, I know Tim is a professor, Ron is a technical guy. It's easy. So make sure you read it, you'll understand it. And his professor said, apply it at home, apply it with your SME, or apply it for the big corporation. Whichever you do, whatever you do, it is applicable across the board. Thank you very much. Our next speaker then is Dr. Vincent Ogutu, the Vice Chancellor Designate, Strathmore University. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gents. So when I was given this book by Prof. Tim Waema, who's been a friend for a very long time, and through him I've met Bayer, who's a great inventor, something that I'm interested in as well, innovation. I thought this was a lifeline because for me this whole strategy thing is not theoretical. It's not an academic question. I'm heading an institution through VUCA times, as Prof was telling us, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And you need to figure out what to do when there's so many unknowns. At breakfast this morning, we were discussing how at Strathmore we re-evaluate the assumptions of our strategy, not every year, not every 3 years, but every quarter. So every 3 months, we look at the assumptions because things have changed. You start the year planning for COVID, and then you have a war in Ukraine that you couldn't have foreseen, and then you have an election coming up as well, and you don't know what's going to happen there as well. So almost every few months, a spanner is thrown in the works, your original plan is no longer valid, and you have to figure out what you're going to do. And that's exactly what this book helps you to do. So it helps you to go back to the crucial questions that undergird any strategy. So why are you trying to head towards that vision? Then there's the what, when, who, and how. And you keep coming back to it, re-examining those assumptions, changing whatever needs to be changed, and then keep heading in the same direction. As we were told by Kip, it's about military precision and heading towards whatever ambition or goal that you've set for yourself. So I found it really useful that this book helps you to wrap your arms around uncertainty and provides clarity on how to go about doing that. Another thing that I really liked about the book is the human-centeredness of the book, the human focus. So the focus is, if you want to succeed, is it the assets you will have? Is it the technical knowledge? What sort of extra advantage do you have that can make you survive in uncertain times? And they bring you back to the idea of the people you have and the way you focus on your customers as well, who are people as well. So they start with your own personnel and they shift everything. It's not about hierarchy, as we were told. It's about competence. What are they good at? What could they do to help you achieve your vision? So they focus very much on competence and rearrange the organization to empower people who are competent. How? By providing a lot of clarity all the time. So communication is one of the biggest things they talk about. Provide clarity on what we're trying to do, what's your role in it. And so when uncertainty comes into the picture, at least people know where we're trying to go and they can help the situation along. If you don't do it that way, if you're hierarchical and you don't provide clarity, then everyone has to wait for what the bosses will decide about this new emerging situation. And we don't have that kind of time. You need agility. So in order to be agile, they bring in communication and clarity. And then I found it very interesting how they make you customer focused. They make you almost feel what the customer feels, and that then enables you to make the kind of decisions that will move you in the right direction. So from very many points of view, I found this book an excellent guide. Like I said, for me, it's not theoretical. I'm actually using the amazing advice that is given in this book. I'd love to thank the authors. Talking of the human-centeredness and competence, there's a wonderful person in the room right here, Nick Vujicic, somebody I greatly admire. You should watch his videos on YouTube. And he somehow embodies that whole idea of what a human can do. You know, when you're looking at strategy and uncertainty, we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know what assets are there, what might we need. But then what you forget to count on is the incredible greatness of the human being, their ability to survive, to overcome odds. And I really think he embodies that aspect of the human spirit that triumphs over any limitations and difficulties that are thrown at us. So Nick, a real pleasure to be here with you. And we hope that this book helps us to do some of the things you do in your life and to do it in organizations. Thank you very much for the book. I highly endorse it.
Okay, so thank you very much, Vincent Ogutu, the Vice Chancellor Designate. Great remarks there. You also talk about the book helping you ask the right questions. There are no answers. Everything is volatile. But if you ask the right questions, they are likely to give you the right answers, and it gives you scenarios. And you try different approaches. Remember, decision making is a process. So you can make a decision today, you make a mistake, correct it. So the book gives you an approach. And I think what Vincent said last is probably the most important, probably we would call it slide of the day, which is strategy eventually is about people. Once we get the people thing right, things will start working. And probably James will come and tell us how he got it right. The next speaker comments on the book will be from Charles Barura, the Chief Manager, KRA, PhD, Government Officer, Practitioner.
I had an opportunity to interact with Prof. and Dr. Baya. And also, when I read the book, the Optimizing Strategy for Results, I remember where Professor Waema found us when we started the process of strategy development, and also Dr. Baya. And when I look at the book, it's absolutely a must-read book. When I look at the book strikingly distills the essential steps for strategy development process. If you are a new CEO, a new strategy person, you find that the book is able to give you the step-by-step approach that you can be able to use for you to be able to do a strategy in your organization. You don't need to say that I've never gone to a strategy class for me to be able to start developing and implementing the strategy. The steps are very clear, and there is to follow for any particular person in the industry. Another thing which was coming out very clear is the clarity in which that the writers have adopted in terms of simplifying the terms. Sometimes people look at strategy as a big thing. They don't know where to start from. But when you start from chapter 1, you get a lot of clarity in the way in which they have brought the concepts. It's inspiring. Even if you are not a reader, you will be feeling like, a strategy person will be feeling like, when will I start doing my strategy? When will I start implementing it? That one is coming out very well. Another thing is the complexity which we find or which we perceive in strategy. They have toned it down. You cannot see those complexities when you are reading the book. It's toned it down to a level that any person, whether you are an SME, you can easily get the glimpse of the book and begin jumping into the strategy development and execution process. I like the precise way in which they have presented the document. It's unsentimental, it's in prose format, and it's illustrated in cinematic terms. You can see, when you are reading it, you feel like you are in a cinema. You are looking at the strategy process, how it's being developed, how it's being executed. That kind of environment really was great to me when I was reading into the book. Having been in an environment where strategy development process is so dynamic, is so diverse, I find myself in that kind of a scenario where I can be able to see the beginning and also the end of my strategy. The other thing which I saw which was very important is the way the writers have brought in the contemporary approaches to strategy. When you look on the environment which we are in, it keeps on changing. And they brought in this one great concept, the FUCA. I was very, very much delighted by that because I will identify with it, especially in my journey on the last 5 years or so that I've been at the center of strategy development in public sector, where you find that the environment is so dynamic, things keeps on changing, and I found that the book answers to me those aspects. So to conclude, what I can say is that it's a great book. It's a book that I can be able to recommend it to anybody. It doesn't matter that you are in public sector, you are in private sector, you are a student, you will find the book very, very, very much relevant. Absolutely, it's a must-read book. And congratulations, Professor Waima, Dr. Baya, and Ronnie. It's a good thing you have done. Now we have the knowledge that you have in your head in the book, and will continue to read even to the generations to come. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Charles, for that exposition of the simplicity of the book, the approach of the book, and also the ideas it gives you in making sure you execute for results. And you have seen the result. You will see the results for KRA when they issue. You know, you are about to file your tax returns, and then at the end of the month, they now do the accounts, and you will see. So well done, Charles, for that practical approach in strategy execution. And then finally, of course, Millicent. Millicent is also, okay, NSSF is quasi-government. It's our compulsory pension fund. And she's in charge of strategy, and she will give us a synopsis of the book and how she has implemented some of the ideas at our workplace. Welcome, Millicent.
I have interacted with Professor and Dr. Baya on issues of strategy and innovation, and I must say that we have learned a lot from the two of them as an organization, and we are in the process of implementing some of the good things that they have shared with us. In the minds of every executive in business, in public sector, private sector, the biggest question that everybody asks themselves each day is, what if things go wrong? Are we on the right path? Are we making the right choices? And this book gives that practical step-by-step guide on how to implement, how to execute, develop and implement strategy, not just from a theoretical point of view, but also from an implementation point of view. My key takeouts from this book, the first one is the interlinkages between strategy and innovation, and the importance of implementing and working with both, and how strategy, how innovation plays a big part in strategy execution, development and implementation. My second key takeout from this book is the importance of strategic intelligence when you're implementing your strategic plans, when you're developing them, and even when you're executing them. And strategic intelligence is important because we are operating in a very competitive space. Today there's COVID, we are gearing towards the general elections, there's Ukraine, and there are many things that keep coming. The environment is very dynamic, and so it's important to put in place strategic intelligence when you're implementing your strategy on a day-to-day basis, because this also informs the policies that we develop, the decisions that we make. The third key highlight that I picked from this book is strategic partnerships. And why this is very key is because we are operating in an environment where our customers, our members, and the people that we serve on a day-to-day basis, they want to see value. And sometimes when you link the competences of your organization and that of another organization, then it provides greater strength, and hence the importance of strategic partnerships, because then it adds value to your competitive space. It creates more products in a simplified way for the members, for the customers, and for the general public. So this book is very practical. It's simple, it's easy to read, very interesting, and definitely a guide for everyone who is implementing strategy. Congratulations, Daktari and Professor, on this book. Thank you.
As Professor Mbidi said, simple. I think Millicent has now said it is practical. It is granular. It's detailed enough for you to execute. So granular, practical. And so these are the people who have read it. It doesn't mean that that's sufficient. It was to whet your appetite to buy the book. Okay? So I hope that creates that desire. And so I would like us now to give a round of applause to our panel. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You can now take your seats. See, none of them said how long it took them to read. So I guess, Millicent, you are doing it slice by slice, pole pole, okay? So it is small enough, it's good bedside reading, okay? So please make sure you read it. It's now then we got the next stage in our program, which is the keynote address by our chief guest. James, I didn't want to be the one inviting you, you know. But finally, I find myself having to invite you. I think James is globally known about what he has done all his life. In fact, if I was to introduce him for somebody who sat in the Equity Board for 12 years, it will be too long, okay? So I will summarize James as follows. One, the Equity Group, the company he runs, has an asset base of $13 billion. For just the comparison, Kenya's GDP is $100 billion. So therefore, Equity Group is 13% of Kenya's GDP. Just for you to internalize that. And this is an institution which 40 years ago virtually didn't exist, to the point of being 13% of Kenya's GDP. In terms of social impact, they have invested in people and society worth $500 billion. When a company is successful, it gives back. And by giving back, then the same society rewards it. And James got that pretty well. And the third one is James then is a thought leader. Because of these things don't come by accident. Strategy, by the way, is deliberate. It's not by accident. So when you read this book, you realize that when you execute strategy, it is something deliberate. And so therefore, let's have our hands and welcome James Mwangi to tell us the story of 13% of Kenya's GDP.
It's a real great honor for me to start before you and talk a little bit about this book. But let me, from the onset, for the sake of time, and so that I can cover something else, associate myself with the highlights that Professor Bidhi, Dr. Ogutu, Dr. Bolula, and Millicent has really articulated. That exposition is what I could have also said, so I don't need to really repeat. I can focus on a few other things. I was really honored by both Professor Waema and Dr. Evans Baya over a cup of tea, and I was told, James, here is a book, can you read it and put a foreword? And if you look at a foreword, I just said a mirror reflection of equity and my life in equity. So for those who have really been pushing me to write a book on my experience, here is a book. I said it's in the book. It's just a mirror reflection. So, duty discharged. Thank you, Professor. But when I wrote those words, just before or after, I wanted to test whether this is a good professorial a piece of work by professor. You know, these things that are supposed to be templates, but when you put them to test in application, it will be difficult. And without telling the two gentlemen who had invited me, I said, why don't we go for a retreat? And I found myself for 4 days with Professor Wema and Dr. Baya. I extended an invitation to our chairman, Professor Macharia. So here he is. I found myself for 4 days without anybody else. And I wanted to test whether if we give them a problem, then they could follow the script. I never told them why. The only thing they said, I think it was Baya who said, we came here, but only one person knew there was an agenda. Because we were invited for a retreat, and the agenda was tabled on. And let me say this. I was deeply impressed that in 4 days, we had followed almost the 7 stages that this book prescribe, or the template it advocates to solve a problem. The problem was a big problem. I myself felt that I needed insights. Had a huge team in the bank that seemed to have better knowledge than me in this area. So I thought, how do I get to supervise this team? So by taking them to treat and lead a following, eventually, I even never told them that we were doing the test, because that was the basis of my address today, to tell the audience that it doesn't just mirror what has been done to equity, it mirrors what we should do. I think Julius called it order. And then he said a very interesting perspective that in Kenya, order sometimes is not very present in many things. I was privileged to work with Dr. Kipngetich, popularly called Julius by people, in the crafting of Vision 2030. And truly, there is no difference between the way equity was strategized and the way Vision 2030 was strategized. But visions and strategies are supposed to be long-term projection. It is true that since the inception of Vision 2030 as a strategy and its implementation, the economy has grown 11 times on the basis of that. But what Julius was saying, if we didn't have this short-term 5-year focus, if we had a long-term focus, as strategy indicates, this country would be very, very different. But we occasionally walks away from our strategy and do some political things because they're elections. And in the process, you lose momentum. And in the process, you get derailed. Strategy requires not just order, but consistency. And it's very deliberate and intentional. It's not, it's good to do. It's the right thing to do, and it's the only thing to do if you wish to succeed. Let me then, for the sake of application, because as I said in the foreword, it really reflects what we have done in equity. We have had the benefit of time. I've spent half of my life in equity. And that half of life, if I call it 30 years, and then you can see what you can see in a strategy pursued consistently, deliberately over a period of time. Julia said equity is celebrating 40 years next year, 2023. We were not there for the first 10 years, But the first 10 years were not very successful. So what we inherited was a technically insolvent financial institution. It had started with a capital of 1 million shillings, but it had accumulated losses of 33 million shillings. So technical insolvency was 32 million shillings. The deposit base of the bank was only 22 million. So it was less than the loss. So there was no possibility of writing a loss with a raw material asset base that is lower than the loss. And the loan book was only 9 million. That is the institution we inherited, 17 employees. But truly we chose to then follow a strategic path to get out of insolvency. And the first one, as has been here, is really establishing the essence and the foundations of strategy. And as we had only three things, we said we'll have a very strong, compelling purpose that will lead and inspire staff, but will also differentiate us in the marketplace. Because we had combined the foundations and strategic intelligence, we realized we could not compete with the banks because, Nick, we were number 66 out of 66. So if you are number 66 out of number 66, you are technically insolvent. The ability to compete with government banks, multinational banks, was difficult. So we said we will not be in banking, but we shall use a banking license. So in our foundations, the strategic foundations, we said our purpose will be to change lives, give dignity, and expand opportunities for our people. We were bold. Strategy is about boldness. Strategy is about courage. That is somebody who is technically insolvent, but he's saying he will change lives and expand opportunities. Strategy is more of an aspiration. And the greater the aspiration, the greater the energy it can generate. The second thing we realized, we had challenges, and that is out of the intelligence, that the best we could do was not to own that space of changing lives, but to champion it. So our vision was to champion socio-economic transformation of Africa. So what did that mean? It meant we could use the resources of all like-minded people to build our strategy. We didn't have the resources, but we could. With those we were aligned, we could be able to do that together. So essentially the fundamentals, and of course the mission was basically how to do it, and we could differentiate ourselves from efficiency and impact. Now, from the onset then, bearing the intelligence, having realized we didn't have capital, the shareholders had walked away. There was no shareholder, Mary, remember, we could turn to, because if I could start a bank with 1 million, why could I go to buy a bank with a loss of 33 million? It doesn't make sense. So no shareholder was willing to put money. And actually, we never got money from shareholders all through. But because then we had differentiated ourselves, we said nobody could compare ourselves with a bank, because we are not a bank. Banks do intermediation. We are changing lives. You can see the power of the foundations of our strategy. And every day we could ask ourselves, how many lives did we change today? Not how many customers we changed or served. It's how many lives did we change? And we thought we would go to heaven. We had a direct ticket to heaven because we were changing lives. And that enough was enough to energize us. We had a good cause. You can imagine the psychology of human beings and how we are wired. So what am I emphasizing? When you are developing your strategy, remember, your strategy is built on foundations that create beliefs, philosophies and ethos and dictate the values. So to me, it all fails or succeeds on the foundations that you have laid for your strategy. And because of saying we are not in banking, we are in changing lives, and people said we can't be customers. And that is how the customers transformed themselves and changed their name to members. And when they changed the members, we realized we have built an asset. And everybody knows the most successful campaign that has ever been run in this country was the member campaign. What did we take? We took that space. And forever, we have never been compared to a bank because we are not a bank. So you can see the power of foundations. So the second one, of course, is the strategic thinking in terms of creativeness. We were technically insolvent. We had no shareholders. And actually, the shareholders who owned the bank, then I think there were 12. Today, they own less than 0.1 because they had no interest. The bank built on its own momentum of strategy other than capital. So when we looked at, we asked ourselves, what space could we create? We knew we didn't have capital to compete with the banks. We had no good products. And actually, we had almost nothing to show. When we had no brand. When you are technically insolvent, you don't have a brand. You can't promise anybody anything. Even legally, you are stopped from making promises by law. So what essentially we did was we said, because we can't compete with the banks, what we'll do, because we are changing lives and giving dignity, we'll focus on dignity. And those who remember, our strategy focused on removing barriers to financial access. We removed the minimum balance, we removed the ledger fee, we removed the limitation on access to liquidity, and stood then before our people and said, we have disrupted banking. We have democratized banking. We build a brand, not of being a good bank, but of disrupting, liberating our people. We had delivered on dignity and honor. The rest is history. The bank that Nick was number 66 is now the largest bank in Kenya, is the largest bank in East and Central Africa, and is the largest bank in 44 countries in Africa. That's how it has become, as Julia said. But what was the imperative? After we have realized what we really needed to do, was then the strategic imperatives of decision making. We said we can't compete with international banks, we can't compete with the government banks, so let's differentiate ourselves. Ours are not customers, they are members. Ours is not customer product, it's not a banking product, it's honor and dignity and freedom to dream, because we will expand your opportunities if people believe in themselves. And essentially, that's where we played and differentiated ourselves with experience. It was never product. And Equity has never claimed to be better than any bank on product. But we claim, truly free, which is honest, that our experience is better than any other bank because we deliver what we do with honor and dignity. And dignity and honor is not a deliverable of banks. But what is really in short, huge shortage in the world is honor and dignity. All of us. Esteem and pride is built on honor and dignity, nothing else. And a human being can never be better than their esteem. So Equity got it, the strategy focus. And then as Julius would say, we then became fanatical executors. A strategy is as good as its execution. You can't, there's no need of thinking. Maybe most likely, maybe we are not the best thinkers, but we are the best executioners. And that's what differentiates equity. Equity has no rolling budget. Has no rolling budget. What is planned today must be delivered this year, because there is a budget for next year. So there are no excuses. I'm privileged. So what did I do? Immediately I realized these gentlemen are very serious. Professor Bithi, we invited Professor Waema to join the board of Equity Bank Kenya. And I thank you sincerely for the value. Then we invited him to chair our board ICT committee. And then we realized Baya could advise the group board. He's now joined the group board so that he can help the group board to oversee. Now, what am I talking about? Strategy is fanatical execution by the right people and the right capabilities. The reason why Julius have served for 12 years, have served for 30 years, maybe, is because we try to pick the best people we could ever get aside. And then you hear, like now, Professor Bithi, 3 of your professors in the University of Nairobi are there. Where do equity operate? Equity operates at the intersection of knowledge and experience. And I always see great tension, and we are glad Professor Macharia is able to manage that tension between practitioners and the creators of knowledge. And that's what has created equity, that friction between knowledge and execution. So people then becomes very important at execution. The last one, because of time, is equity's ability to pick insights. That is what you can't also beat equity. The book calls it learning. The books call it creating knowledge, but we call it insights. You learn and develop insights. And to us, I think in the bank, Mary calls it creating a feedback loop. Get as much feedback, from the feedback, learn, develop insights, and use them to create strategic options. Talked a lot about strategic options. And if everybody talked about VUCA, but look at what equity, what happened to equity because of that capability during the most volatile period in the history of equity, the last 2 years of a global pandemic. Equity doubled its balance sheet from $6 billion to $13 billion in 2 years. The banking industry shrank, but equity doubled. Equity moved from a market share, entire market share of 9% to 16% during that short period. Why? Because equity used the levers of strategic options. And in the process, consolidated the customer base in the Kenyan banking industry and found itself, as Julius said, with 13.9% of the GDP of the country. It's simply that options. Which option do you apply at what time? And I would have said, Professor, I wish the book emphasized a little bit more on strategic options, because people then assume strategy is cast on stone. Strategy is not, it should be as responsive and as agile as the environment. When volatility comes, then it must be able to sail through. When uncertainty is at its best, then strategy must be quickly changed. The ability for equity to change is what it amazes me. That in the morning, Equity might be doing this. In the evening, Equity is doing a very different thing. If it was red in the morning, it might be white in the afternoon. That ability to change, adaptation, I don't want to use the adaptation, but why is there that? Because of flexibility of governance structures. And that is what, unfortunately, most strategies have a fixed governance structure that doesn't respond to the dictates of the environment. And the reason why most ships sink is because of the script. The script makes assumptions and assumes that the assumptions will hold. When you see the assumptions are not holding, then you need to set aside the script and manage from the options that you have. What does that dictate? It dictates strategy should be in the hands of experienced, exposed, knowledgeable, tested people who can be trusted in uncertain times to chart different paths that were never even envisaged. And that is what Equity did. Nick, what Equity did is when March last year, but when COVID struck, the central bank wrote a memo, you can accommodate customers for 3 months. But our research department, which is again knowledge, an organization must have deep knowledge, had predicted that for the last, we had done 12 pandemics over the last 800 years. They predicted no pandemic has ever been overcome in less than 3 years. So we said we can't give customers 3 months. We'll give them 3 years. I almost lost my job because of not listening to the regulator. But that's pandemic is still with us 3 years later. What happened? We all had the same NPLs in the banking industry. The NPL for the banking industry at the moment is at 14.1, including equity. Equity is at 8%. It saved the customers. It kept the rights of the economy on. It supported lives and livelihoods during very difficult times. Our chairman was moved from chairing, and we did the response to the COVID, the national response to COVID. And amazingly, I've never been a medical doctor, but the outcome of that is the bank had set aside $1.7 million. Was it $17 million to support community? Out of that, a PPE manufacturing subsector was created in Kenya. Kenya became self-sufficient in PPE manufacture, and Kenya became Africa's largest exporter of PPEs. In the process, our loan book grew by 30% because we had to fund that new opportunity. And all the green shots, when everybody was intimidated, we were looking for all the green shots in the economy. As the economy bounced back, it grew by 7.5%, and equity increased its balance sheet. The first year by 54%, and the second year by 30%. And that's how it doubled its balance sheet. Now, that ability to be flexible, that ability to use the strategic options is what has created. And lastly, let me talk about review. Equity reviews daily, not annually. Everybody has a dashboard. Did we do what we had set to do today? If not, in the evening before dinner, you receive a call to say, how will we catch up by tomorrow? The most significant thing in a strategy, other than getting it right, executing is constant review. You review. You don't review to challenge people. You review to learn. Results may never be got if the structure and the intent is wrong. And that is the first thing to do. Learn to tweak the strategy. But more importantly also, to hold people to account, to execution. That which gets measured gets done. So if you are measuring daily, then it's done daily. And that's how you avoid rolling budgets or plans. So for equity, we do. And it's not just that. So how have we used reviews and evaluations? Not just to learn, but once we use learning, we convert the learnings to knowledge and insights and transform ourselves. Equity has disrupted itself 4 times. I think we are now implementing 4.0. Mary is the 4th disruption. And equity 4.0 will have no similarity with 3.0. 3.0 had no similarity to 2.0. The most difficult thing during those changes is to deal with the vested interest. Let me add there. The people who created Equity 1.0 ended up not to be the leaders of 2.0. You create another layer of leaders on top. Nobody loses a job. But they lose responsibility. I think 3.0, out of 2.0, the only person who made it to 3.0 was one. Mary has survived through. She made it to 4. I'm hoping, Mary, you will be there for 5.0. I hope I will be there. Because essentially, you can't have a competence that is lower than the ambition. And that is the biggest mistake you make. What time do you seed? At what time do you seed? So constantly, for me and Mary, permanently learning. I think, Dr. Ogutu, we want to thank you. I think we have attended 6 courses in Strathmore. Constantly keep on learning. Mary has been in Harvard, I think, 4 times, some 8 months. Keep on learning. That's the only way you can reinvent yourself. And then surround yourself with the better people. As you can see, the trick for equity was to create a board that was more insightful than the management. It's not bottom-led. It should be led from the top. The biggest disaster I've seen in this country is where management is more competent than the board. And then board becomes a stamping board. And then you take them through whichever way you want, because they can't comprehend. Our boards must, and management must not be by favoritism, but not be by any other consideration than ability and competence. And competence is depth of knowledge. A strategy is as good as its bearers. And you can't have a better strategy, a good strategy, and expect good results if the people are not as good as strategy. Equity prides itself as having the best management team in Africa. I don't know about the world because our operations in Africa, but I challenge anybody in this room to give me of a better choice. And the good thing, we create an enabling environment for people to thrive. So you'll find we hire CEOs for roles because roles are less important. Because what is required is not the title. Mary always tells us, we are leaders without a title. Each of us is a leader, but title is irrelevant. Strategy requires leaders without an ego. And leaders who doesn't think about titles. They think about capability and competence. constant evaluation. Are we still on track? What are the lessons? And who is to be held accountable for both success but also for failure? Accountability is not only for failure, but there is reward for success as you hold failure to accountability. I want lastly to say, the story of equity, when put on pen, will never be a better book than the book we are launching today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, James. I think you have heard it. He has said the book is a reflection of equity. So probably Professor Wema and Dr. Baya, we need to probably tweak the title and give it a subtitle, The Story of Optimizing Strategy, The Story of Equity Bank. Okay? But I'm sure you have heard that profits is a byproduct of a foundation. Yeah? So when you then start rolling a strategy, start with the philosophy. If the philosophy is wrong, the money will not come. So the equity, or the story of equity is, I think it's a very simple Swahili thing, James, of tenda wema, nenda zako. That's it. If you do the right thing, blessings will come from heaven, from earth, from everywhere. The blessings do come. So thank you, James, for that exposition of the story of equity and how it fits very well with this book. And I'm sure most of you have learned lessons. There are very many books which have been written about equity, so many articles. You can read those, and it will gel very well with this book. He has also given you a challenge, guys. I think there's one area, chapter 3, strategic options, that we need to sort of expand so that we establish scenarios. So then it's not about prescriptions, it's about options that you confront. And James talked about confronting them daily. Confront these options daily, and you create different paths. And when a crisis comes, you have created the resilience internally to be able to establish a path quickly to take advantage of an opportunity that arises, but also to avoid a catastrophe when it comes. And if you look at the companies that have grown in the crisis, that have then created incredible wealth for the owners. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I mean, we have a crisis and the guy just goes past everybody, and now he's at almost $400 billion in wealth. I mean, how do you do that in the middle of a crisis? It's because he thinks differently. I mean, by the time you think of, bringing a rocket backwards to land, you have to think differently, okay? And that is really the essence of why we are here to launch this book today. So, without further ado, thank you very much, James, for that exposition and that very powerful keynote address. So, we are now moving to the next one, which is to hear from the authors. As we are just talking, let's hear from the thought leaders themselves, a remark from the authors. So, there are 3 of them. A lot of you know them, Professor Wema, Ron Price, and Evans Baya. So 2 of them are here. Ron is online, and he will participate from the US online. And then also, so Tim and Evans, for me, is a friend, personal, very personal friend. And we have been friends for over 25 years, and also very good family friends. And we used to call ourselves Musketeers. It was me, Tim, and Professor Kiamba. In the 90s, we provoked the university to do things differently, and we ushered in what's expanding university education, what you guys call today parallel programs. And so it was a very difficult time, and probably we'll write a story of how that happened. But luckily the Musketeers are here. Professor Kiamba is here, Professor Wema is here, and myself. Then Ron Price is joining us online. He's an author, and he has written several books on strategy and people, and we'll tap into his knowledge. He's also a consultant. He runs a consultancy called Price Associates, and you can Google and to know about it. Evans Bayer is a scientist. How he crossed over to strategy, he'll tell us today. But he has used his knowledge of science to then cross over to strategy, because strategy is both a science and an art. You have seen Equity talking about the way they interpret strategy. That's an art. It's an approach which is different from everybody else. So you can read a book and say it's structured, but the execution is an art. And that's what Peter Drucker taught us in strategy. Strategy itself, the document is a commodity, but the execution is an art. So those are the authors, ladies and gentlemen. And so they're here. So probably each of them will just say a few words, and then I will provoke them myself.
The story begins back in 2020 in February. Actually, it was the end of January. And the three of us met in Scottsdale, Arizona. We were there for something else. And Prof and I have been working together on innovation. And Ron and I had written a book on innovation, and we were doing other things. But three of us had never worked together. And I realized that whenever I went to multinationals or large organizations, they want us to come up with new products, new value, new ways of doing things. But the number one challenge I always used to have is you want to do new things, you want to have new products, new customers, you want to innovate, but actually your approach is not strategic. And therefore, we ended up having to engage, and we would talk about this new product, but actually, why are you doing it? What is the foundation? How are you going to make the society better? How are you going to make your customers better? All those different things. And we always found there was always this huge gap between innovation and strategy and the future of the organization. And so I had seen Prof actually do this work really, really well here in Kenya. And Ron and I, we had been doing it in the US, but actually using different approaches. And during this conversation, we said, you know what, there is a problem to be solved, that we needed to provide a framework, a practical tool that organizations, small and large, for-profit and not for-profit, globally can actually be able to execute. And that's how we actually started the concept. At that point, it was an idea. So we leave Arizona the end of January, not anticipate COVID, and we had agreed among ourselves that we need to get this done. But now COVID hit. Prof, you can take over the rest of the story.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope this is on.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. My story begins actually where Kip mentioned, we call him Kip, with the Three Musketeers. And this is the time we started thinking about strategy for the University of Nairobi. And since that time, I started learning a lot about strategy. Then I found this is an area which does not have very many people. And therefore, I occupied that space. And I have been doing strategy for lots of organizations in this country and the region. So when I met Evans and Ron, and I hope Ron will be able to come online, we said, let's do something together. I had been in this space, and they had been in this space in the US. And therefore, we said, let's do something together. And then actually, when COVID hit, then we said, this is the perfect opportunity to do it. And then we started the journey in April 2020. I think the rest now becomes history. As Kip, we move on with the questions.
Okay, so we also have Ron Price online. Ron, we are here in Kenya. Please speak.
I don't think I can find the words to describe how grateful I am for the partnership that Professor Tim and Dr. Evans and I discovered working on this book together. We all had great passion for strategy, we all had little different experiences with how we had approached it. For me, most of my strategy work had been in the private sector. It had been with businesses. And I had often been frustrated that I felt they didn't understand how to do strategy and get the most benefit from it. There were some organizations I worked with that were pretty good about thinking about their foundations and their purpose. There were some organizations that had a pretty good grasp of what their strengths or their limitations were, or they may have had a good idea of what the environment was giving them in opportunities and challenges. Occasionally, I would work with a business that was pretty good at creative thinking. Rarely did I run into a business that had mastered the development of the strategy plan, the execution plan, and then had successfully followed through on it. So often they lost their energy before they got to that point. Or we may find some organizations that really didn't spend that much time on the front end and they spent all their time on the execution. But as Evan said earlier, it became very tactical rather than strategic. And I felt there was so much opportunity for organizations to tap into greater potential if we could help them see strategy in a more holistic way. If we could help people move away from seeing strategy as an event and think of it more as a journey, more as a process. So as the three of us spoke, we talked about the idea that strategy is made up of several different stages. And each of those stages has activities, and it has tools, and it has particular outcomes. And that we should help organizations define each of those stages and celebrate the progress that they were making as they move through each of those stages. One of the ways that I often think of describing it as chunking strategy down into bite-sized pieces so that we can enjoy each course of the strategy meal. And so working together in this book was a great joy for me. It was a joy, first of all, because these are two wonderful people that I've grown to love. We laughed. By the way, we videotaped most of our meetings because we were doing them on Zoom. So I keep threatening them that we're going to have a reality TV show about developing a book on strategy. It probably will never happen. But what came out of that time was the joy that we had being together, sharing our ideas together, writing and critiquing each other's writing, and having debates. And through that process of respect, and I really appreciated what Dr. Mwangi said about dignity and honor, because it was as we found that in each other that we reached a higher level of intelligence, a higher level of insight, and an ability to put something together that none of us could have done on our own. But working together, we were able to create something that was much, much greater than I think any of us expected at the beginning. So I want to express my great appreciation for the collaboration. I want to express my appreciation for all of the people who contributed and helped us. Several of you in the room today who gave us your advice, who helped us to prepare for today's program, who've been great advisors throughout. Several of the people who read the original manuscript and gave us ideas for how we could improve it. For our publisher, Greenleaf Book Group, and for Inc.com, who had the confidence to let us be published through their imprint and through their promotional piece. And for all the people who have written reviews or forewords, who've given us of themselves to help us become still bigger than what we could be as the three of us. So for me, I've really come back and appreciate what Dr. Mwangi said, that strategy is about people. And when we understand how to organize around people's talent, their skills, their passion, we can do something magical. And equity is a wonderful example of that I hope we can all follow ourselves in the future. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be with you here this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. And before I invite the other panelists, there's one burning question about when you wrote this book, Of course, you had an audience in mind. How did you expect them to benefit? Probably just when you wrote, you had somebody in mind like James Mwangi or myself, that they will read this book, and what would be the probably one or two things that you think they would benefit, all three of you?
Okay, I'll start this. First, one of the reasons we wrote this book is we found a lot of the books in strategy were very complex. So simplicity was actually one of our objectives. And you actually had the people who gave highlights on the book actually mentioning that the book is very simple to read. So I think on that note, we achieved that objective. We wanted a very simple book. The second thing is we wanted a practical book that a student of strategy, that a practitioner of strategy, that a chief executive in any organization can be able to follow to develop a strategy, execute a strategy that delivers results. So one of the things we wanted people to get out of this book is a guide that can guide them to develop a good strategy, to execute that strategy, and achieve results. So that is one of the objectives. Perhaps you can add one more. And
there is a number that really disturbs me, which is 17%. 17%, what is it? That is actually a publication by IBM that showed organizations globally, the percentage of organizations that actually achieve 70% or more of their strategic objectives. Only 17%. Maybe you work in an organization, you go through your strategy or the document that you put together and actually start evaluating it. It's a sad affair for most organizations. So we wanted to focus on results. Get results. Get stuff done. With that, there's the scientific side and the artistic side. The scientific side is the structure, the 7-part process. You follow 7 steps. We give you the templates in it. Just get that done. That will set you in the path of results. And then the artistic part of this is the execution, the people side of this. That was really important. So if you're a practitioner, you're CEO, now you have both. And I am looking forward to seeing more organizations not be part of that 70, be part of the 83%, not being part of the 83%. We want to increase that number from 17% to much more, because we believe this book will deliver the results you're looking for.
What I thought was most important that could help people be more successful with strategy. Once Professor Tim and Dr. Evans and I started talking, the combined insights of our unique experiences. Professor Tim, as he mentioned earlier, has worked with 70 different organizations on strategy. You learn a lot about what works and what doesn't work when you do it that many times. Dr. Evans, his approach was strategy, oftentimes coupled with innovation. And in our relationship, Dr. Evans often played the counterpoint, or he often played the other voice. We would affectionately refer to him as our contrarian. He would challenge our thinking. He would say, wait a minute, is this simple enough? Wait a minute, are we really going to get through to the audience? So what I discovered when we started working together was that there was something much more valuable than me just trying to capture my 50 years of experience. It was the synergy of us combining our experiences that I felt would give people something that was unique. Anytime I think about writing a book, first thing I go, everything else I can discover that's been written. And I ask myself the question, is there anything new? Because if there's nothing new to share, there's no reason to write. And as we began to approach this book, what became very clear to me was that the new thing that we could offer was something that took into account all these years of experience, the different concepts or mental models that we brought to the table with us, We mention in the introduction things like emotional intelligence and formal axiology, which we've never seen anybody incorporate into any writing about strategy. The recognizing the unique talents and skills of people, and that I felt that we could give people something that was unique in its concept, but very, very practical, and something that they could go back to over and over and over again to guide them every cycle that they go through for strategy. And I know for me and the work that I do, this book will be something that's a useful part of the work that I do for the rest of my career, because it's so practical and it has so many great reminders on how to do strategy well.
So thank you very much. So with those remarks, therefore, from the authors, I would like now to invite additional panelists. Please join us on stage. So Karibu. So quick one, we'll start with Kasimu as he settles, because he is the one who has not spoken. And he's an advisor. He's head of the advisory at KPMG. And we'll begin with a very difficult question. Very, very difficult question, which is definition of results. You know, when you have had James here to say results, he probably never told you the profitability of Equity, nothing. He just told you the impact on people. Yes. That's results. I guess for you as an advisor, you also talk about results. Can you tell us a little, what is a result?
Let me start by congratulating the authors, Professor Tim Waima, Ron, and Evans, for a really, really good book. I think from the description of the book, it's definitely a really simple, practical read, which gives very good guidance on how to go through the process of strategy and formulation. Going back to the question that you've asked, Julius, results. What you will tend to find in most organizations is that they will have something that they call their ambition. And ambition can be articulated by way of the financial results that they want to achieve, whether it's how much share of the market, profitability in terms of bottom line, contribution to society in general. As we've had Dr. Mwangi speak about, while he spoke about where Equity started and the size of the balance sheet and their loan book and so on, and went on to paint the picture of what Equity has become, you've also heard him speak about the contribution of Equity to society, whether it's during the pandemic, whether it's to students who come from underprivileged backgrounds. So it's really being very clear, beyond the strategy, what ambition are you trying to achieve? And that is going to guide how you go about measuring it. In many of our organizations, I think we look at the annual results and so on. But ultimately, by the time you get to pronounce annual results, there's results that are being achieved on a daily basis. And how do you really monitor that so that it contributes to the bigger good in terms of your ambition?
So thank you very much, Gerald. Probably back to James. What kind of scenario are you building for Equity 5.0?
Two aspects, if I may just start background. The fundamentals create, from the people aspect, you create an organization culture. And culture would be the best measurement of whether you ever get results. From the external side, once you have made the promise by the purpose, then the promise, if it is executed, it creates the brand. And so you tend to create, to measure. Now, the best measurement for us is the market or the members or the public perception of yourself. And if you look at Equity, and I'm not sure about this, whether I should say it, we are of the view the Wings to Fly sub-brand might have overtaken the main brand. And truly, then you then see it is the truest measure of changing lives,
of giving honor and dignity to orphans and expanding their opportunities. At the moment, the Wings to Fly is now being threatened by Equity Afya. We are trusting in 3 years, Equity, which was supposed to be a bank, will have 500 Equity Afya clinics. Now, we realized that as we moved along the way, that the biggest constraint after people had access to money, the threat was ill health in the family. And so then you started solving. So when you measure equity, I don't know whether you can ever measure it in profitability. And I concur with what you said. That is just an outcome. You don't set that as the objective. You set the essence and use the screen of the public or the consumer to measure success.
We'll see how 5.0 equity looks like in years to come, and probably implications for what 6.0 could be. Scenarios, building options. Okay, so probably from the authors themselves. Okay, looking back now, when you put the title "Optimizing for Results," can you probably explain to us what you meant by optimizing for results?
I think the beginning point was the 17% number that Evans talked about, that only 17% of organizations achieve what they planned to achieve. And that really motivated us. Said, can we write a book that helps people to achieve, more people to achieve more than 17% to achieve the results that they desire. And therefore, we spent a lot of time in stage 5, planning for execution, because that is where often the failure is. Defining your results, defining the KPIs, the indicators, the metrics, and then assigning responsibilities, departmental level up to the individual level. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and that chapter actually is one of the largest chapters in stage 5, because after that you go into execution. But the planning for execution must be done. And we haven't yet used this methodology and seen the results, and actually we will start now creating profiles of organizations so that they can say, yes, after using your methodology, we have been able to do this. And this is one of the things that we will start to do.
One of the questions that I always ask people is, why do you go to work? Why do you go to work? As a matter of fact, good organizations should be able to answer that for every person in the organization. Why do you go to work? What results are expected from your work? Because that should be a contribution towards the overall success of the strategic objectives of the organization. And this is why results are so important. Because if you cannot measure, as Dr. Mwangi earlier mentioned, if you cannot measure, you're not going to focus on it. You're not going to put energy to it. You're not going to resource it. You're not going to hire the right people. So every job should have results, and those results must be measurable. I love the old story of somebody who was sweeping at NASA and said, what is your job? What is your objective? It's to take men to the moon. What does a cleaner have to do with taking someone to the moon? It is that clear to them. The purpose is that clear to them. That my job contributes this way, then that contributes that way, then contributes that way, until we get the strategic objective. And so results must be defined at the highest level of the organizations to the lowest level of organizations. And by the way, when I go to an organization for strategic analysis, that's the very first thing I do. I go around and ask people, do you know why do you come to work? What result is expected? It's fascinating. I understand why we have that 70%. We need to be very clear what the results are.
Thank you very much. I think
just before Ron comes, there must be a people focus as well. Because one of the things that we have done in the book is to focus on people, just like James mentioned earlier, is to focus on people. So in those results, what is the alignment to what people want to achieve in life? That is very important. And that is one of the failures, because people see the organization wants to achieve this, but what about me and everybody else? So people must be factored in the results that the organization wants to achieve. Thank you.
Earlier on, I said Africa is a vast continent, very promising, okay? We are probably at a very important inflection point. And that inflection point is reflected by companies like Equity, a renaissance of sorts. Now, Gerald, you are an advisor for KPMG in Africa, Kenya and Africa. Now, how would you use a book like this to preach new thinking in our continent? How about you?
Yeah. Yes, indeed, and we've served many organizations of different sizes in different sectors in Africa. And as you mentioned, Africa is a new frontier. And the growth of Africa and taking the opportunities that abound in Africa is going to be dependent not only by what large corporates do and what governments do, but also what medium-sized corporations and SMEs do in contributing to taking advantage of the opportunities that are on this continent. So when I go through this book and I look at the practical steps that have been given, a guide and a framework to strategic thinking and formulation of a strategy that can be executed, measured, and learning from the experience and the results that you generate, in my view, it presents a really good tool for business leaders in Africa who are involved at all levels, SMEs, medium corporates, large corporations, and government agencies, to utilize it as a toolkit to guide their strategic thinking and implementation of strategy. So I think it's really opportune and will play a great role in improving our ability to put together a strategy that is geared towards delivering and optimizing results.
James, what would be the greatest gift to your friends? You know, why I'm asking this is, I went to a party on Saturday and so that just see the changing trends. A friend of mine was celebrating his 70th birthday. And of course, friends came and everybody had a bag. 9 out of 10 of those gifts were books. And I was like, wow. Would you give this book, James, to your friends on their birthdays?
I think let's start from today because I don't know when the birthday of my friends will be. But essentially, as we said, this is more of an organized and very systematically built framework. So it will start with my colleagues. We have been doing it without a script. We have never written the book. So hopefully today, 1,000 of my colleagues will have a copy of this book. Let's start there. But so that they have a script that they can use and then practical. And hopefully, we invite the Don still in the university, Julius. Then 5 years down the road, we can say, how was the book used to create order, as you used the term, and to organize organizations to be more deliberate and intentional in pursuing their purposes through a strategic framework. And lastly, I'll talk to Madam Kipgetich here, and we'll test what I will come with for your birthday.
Okay, thank you very much for all the insights. I think now you understand the book, you understand strategy, you understand results, and how things get done. Okay? We have inserted a small item on the program, and this is a special guest for us today. And you talk about what James talked about, and the panelists talk about Africa not getting it right. We have 1.2 billion people, for heaven's sake, okay? And we are the fastest growing, and we are the youngest. And we have now information. It's a combination of two things that has happened in Africa for the first time. Young people, but access to technology and by extension information like no other time in history. So if we miss this with those two capabilities, then nothing else will solve. But here today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a gentleman who is abled differently. He was born without limbs, okay, and hands, but he is world famous for using his abilities. I will not say more. I want him to say everything about himself. And this is Nick Vujicic. He's the most famous in TikTok. He runs an NGO, okay, which is a ministry called Life Without Limbs. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. Evans, how many minutes will you give me? 10. Beautiful. Thank you. Give me a wave at 9. Okay? I want to take every single minute of mine. Can you turn me down just a fraction, please? Thank you. It is my distinguished honor to be with you all in this room. I want to say an absolute privilege to come to this country for such a time as this. I've done 75 countries. I've spoken at the World Economic Forum. 22 presidents, prime ministers. I was just with former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel 4 days ago. I was embraced by the Knesset and the members of Knesset there in that wonderful country, and I'm looking forward to the day that Kenya moves their embassy to Jerusalem in Israel. I am praying for your next election. I am praying for your economy. This is not my first time to Kenya, and I am most inspired by everyone here. I do want to say that it would be my privilege and honor, James, to put my hand up first to ask you for your trust and honor to try and see a movie made on Equity Bank's success and your story. It is a story that I've never heard in comparison to any other story. I do believe that stories move the hearts and the minds of the next generations that must move forward. It is understanding that there is opportunity in Africa, and a lot of strategy and a lot of execution. The bridge of that is wisdom. And the wisdom of such, though, with an added word of discernment, for you to see the unseen. And I do believe that Africa can make it rain. Africa can make it rain in a way that no other continent could. Africa can also right now have a moment of window to make sure that you are not hijacked by corruption nor big tech, and to actually do as much as you can as the private sector representing the country of Kenya to work hand in hand with the government no matter who becomes in power. I cannot urge you enough, firstly, on the mitigation of risk of other countries that have been hijacked and unrighteously corrupted and taken over. And I'm not just talking about the things of what we have known, but the future of Kenya. It is not an if Kenya will continue to arise. It is how we will steward it and how we will protect it. I do want to say that in the wisdom of such, there are some buttons that you can induce rain economically here that no one else could. You have much advantage as a continent. A Western society that has empathy and that has sympathy upon the population of the poverty of Africa. There are many of my friends in the West that are looking forward to working hand in hand with financial policies and actually the private sector in Africa for microloans. I was just with the Federal Minister of Ghana a couple days ago in Israel. And I do believe that the richness of Africa is far beyond the ground, the commodities, the minerals, even far beyond the server farms that really should be done. And I apologize on behalf of the West that we did not hold hands with you earlier, that we did not come and invest with you and equip you and empower you instead of later on buying you out. And then giving you loans for renovations of things that you didn't need, and then money is pocketed, and now you're indebted to China. Do not look to America as an example. We are $33 trillion in debt, induced deflation of cash, and a fiat currency that is not backed by gold. You have no idea where America is heading. It is heading to nothing. Hyperinflation is the second most scariest thing on planet Earth after nuclear war. And I urge you to secure Kenya now. I urge you to secure Kenya now with smart farming. There are models and modules of smart farming that you can produce 260 acres of produce under 1 acre. You can produce any kind of vegetable, of any climate, fully organic when it's climatized, microclimate systems to the root systems. Food security is the biggest thing. In fact, I can argue that the West used Ukraine as a pawn to actually disable and cripple Western European economy as we see it now collapse. I want you to know that I believe that this is the time, not just for Kenya, for opportunity, but the wake-up call and a Kairos moment to work hand in hand with the government. And to not just think of the current businesses, but to induce a mandatory education of financial literacy and investments in an early age of school education. I envy Kenya because you are allowed to talk about God in schools. Yet my heart rips that it's just a lack of the bridge between those who have a lot, who haven't had made enough time to equip the educated and aware, to give you the steroid shots to go to a whole new level. I believe you might call this controversial. I believe that this is the time that Kenya may need to make some very difficult decisions. Very difficult decisions. In the next 3 years, we will see if all of a sudden another pandemic comes in 3 years, and another pandemic comes in the next 3 years, something that has been manufactured. And I want you to know that here and now, food, education, but pushing the buttons of microloans and education, of finance and opportunity. And we must also change the culture, I believe. As I spoke in front of, I think, 3,000 students yesterday. We must tell our students that you are not as good as your teachers. They say that. You're only as good as your teachers. And you as entrepreneurs, I hope that you understand that you yourselves cannot tell the next generation, try and be like us. And try and be as good as us. No. Be better. Go beyond us. take what we know, take the opportunity, build up the bridges, get education, secure yourself. You don't need the West to give you food anymore. You don't need their loans. Consolidate your loans and reset Kenya. I'll leave you with this 60 seconds of why there is so much corruption in Kenya. Kenya is a baby that is born out of the womb of the mother, and the umbilical cord is still attached to the mother. And someone comes with a contract for the baby to sign to give them milk. And for as long as Kenya only drinks milk and does not cut the umbilical cord of the United Nations, period, on financial, economic development and sustainability, and the next cry is not for aid, the next cry is who will come alongside Africa and come on the train of one of the greatest stories of history, of the fastest growing economic development in history, period. And how do we righteously before God make sure that we are not raped, that we are not hijacked, and we don't accept aid under caveats that even contradict our God beliefs? Do not turn away from God. It's not about who is president. Look at America, period. Yes, America was much better when Biden was not president. As an American, I speak. Economically, ask any American. But it is not about the presidents. It is about you. You cannot change who's in politics, so. And you can't expect righteousness in politics until politics is taken by righteousness. And the only people to keep them accountable are gone over time, I understand, is the private sector. For the cry out through the education and awareness of the next generation, for them to know that you as Kenyans are here to get off the umbilical cord. This is not political. This is not political. It's economic decisions and difficult decisions that you're going to have to make. And I want to leave you with this vision. God told me in 2008 through a dream that Kenya will be the rising star where 9 other sub-Saharan African nations will make a unified, sustainable system. And I am moved emotionally, spiritually, mentally. I could talk for 6 hours straight what's in me. But I want to say this is the Kairos moment. And I thank God Almighty that I was here personally to witness such a meeting. Congratulations to the authors of this book. I've known Evans for years, 10 years, and I'm going to his home later this afternoon. I am very excited about the future, very excited. I'm going to leave you with the practical thing. Can you imagine a $5 billion international infrastructure of server farms on 265 servers that can bring down 70 cents per gigabyte download and upload down to a penny, a 70th? That is how you can make it rain on one practical solution. Cut data, online data, by 70-fold and see what local entrepreneurs can do with that. That can happen. That can happen with a trifecta of Kenya, Israel, and Texas. And in any way, shape, or form that I can help you, I'm here to serve Kenya. Love you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Very powerful message. The professors have given us the tools. Let's use them to actualize his dreams. What God told him about this country, that we should be the leading light. Thank you very much, Nick. So it's now my pleasure that we got the next stage. Don't worry, we are about the end. We want to unveil the book. So we have our chief guest and the two authors who are here, Baya and Waima. Please come forward. I'm going to do a countdown so that then James does the honors. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The book is unveiled. So there it is. So thank you very much for your applause. Yes. Yeah, so there it is, guys, ladies and gentlemen. The book is officially launched. Okay, so I would like now to invite Professor Kiamba to come and do the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Tim has requested me to give a vote of thanks, firstly, and secondly, the way forward after today. What happens? You heard him, Tim, and also keep for Julius Kimngetich talk of the Three Musketeers at the University of Nairobi. It's a bit of the history of the University of Nairobi. When I became the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of Administration and Finance, that is all the way 1997, the university was pronounced as bankrupt and we had a crisis. So the Senate, indeed the Council, set up a committee to look at that question: what does the university do? And the committee was called a committee to find emergency financial recovery strategies of the University of Nairobi. And as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration and Finance, I was to chair it. The good thing was also that in the council we had really powerful people in terms of administration, financial matters, and so forth. The governor of the Central Bank of Kenya was a member of the council. The chief executive of Barclays Bank was a member of the council. And we saw resources that we could utilize as a university to support the university. And I decided also as a chair to get the university involved in the process by bringing in members of staff to participate who are not necessarily members of the university council. That is when I took hold of Tim, Professor Timothy Waima Infu. And I took Kip Julius Kimngetich to join this committee because we had been working with them a little before that, asking almost similar questions. Where does the University of Nairobi go in view of its current status? There were a few other people, but both Tim and Kip were critical in that committee. But I had met Tim a number of years before that. As I finished my doctoral studies at the University of Cambridge, Tim, I will not say the year, Tim was coming in also to start his PhD at the University of Cambridge. So we have a very long history. And therefore I knew I had somebody I could trust. And then there was Kip. And we started thinking seriously, how does the university overcome this problem? It's a similar problem that, to a great extent, the current situation the University of Nairobi is facing, and I had the opportunity to remind the Vice Chancellor of that history. I hope he will exploit it. And it was that committee we first decided, let's pay a courtesy call to the Chancellor. Those who don't know, then all public universities, there's one chancellor, the head of the states, the president of the nation. So we paid a courtesy call to His Excellency the President Daniel Arap Moi then, and actually told us he cannot help. The head of public service by then was somebody called Liki, who you know Liki in terms of Kenya's history. And he was part of a dream team that had been put together by the president to see whether they can also change Kenya's economy and related matters. He told us, as far as is concerned, the University of Nairobi should be somewhere in Garissa, not in Nairobi. Maybe it would be more useful that far. And we said, what the hell is he talking about? We knew we were alone. And that was, to me, a very important challenge to a leading academic institution. If they cannot find the solutions, who else can find solutions to it, let alone the nation? So one of the things we've been thinking about, the possibility of the university generating income. The university itself had incredible resources. You may not know, by then, it was one of the largest landowners in Nairobi after the Kenya Railways. Kenya Railways land was appropriated to individuals. That's another history. Fortunately, University of Nairobi still has that amount of land, protected jealously by all the vice chancellors who have sat in that position. So it was agreed the university sets up a subsidiary company called University of Nairobi Enterprises and Services Limited to provide the leadership in the university, utilizing the resources that it has to generate income. The resources with respect not only just to real estate, but also the incredible mental capacity it had in all areas, from medicine to business to agriculture, literally every area. And that was the beginning of real changing of universities in Kenya when they realized they must generate income. Relying on just support from the government should really be the last thing to do. And therefore, both TEAM and KEEP became very instrumental in developing that concept. And we used our business school. Again, it is really, I think it still remains the business school, the leading business school in Kenya, appropriately challenged by Strathmore, the Vice Chancellor is here, challenged by the American and the university, as it is called, USU, because the students from those smaller universities at the moment, I'm told, are more competitive than University of Nairobi. Another challenge for the University of Nairobi. And perhaps that is it should be, because then it will wake up and perhaps run faster, if not harder, and use the incredible mental capacity it has literally in every area. So around the importance of generating income, then we started that movement, and it was gaining momentum slowly to support the government in supporting its largest university. Other universities also tended to follow suit what happened. But we also learned from global examples of what was happening to the likes of Harvard, to the likes of Cambridge. At any rate, we say Tim and myself are graduates of Cambridge. By then, I had another postdoctoral certificate also from Harvard. Let's use this experience to support our university. So strategic thinking and planning for TEAM starts very far. And we decided then to have the very first strategic plan of the University of Nairobi, which the two guys coordinated. and I worked very closely with them. So that was the time the University of Nairobi, despite its incredible age, produced the very first strategic plan. A little before that, the World Bank has started some support program to Kenyan universities, but it was very limited. It wasn't really helping us. And one of the World Bank ladies who were there told us, actually, university cannot survive for more than 5-10 years. We told her, come in the next 100 years, you'll find University of Nairobi there. Because we are there, and other Kenyans will continuously be there. It's possible we were a little hard on that good lady, but I think we took the challenge seriously, that it will be there 100 years from that period. And I think it will be supported by all the other universities. So this started the process of all universities in Kenya having to necessarily draw strategic plans. And the biggest resource over the entire university sector then became TEAM and KEEP. Those are just my simple names for them. They have literally drawn the strategic plans of all universities and any other, even middle-level institutions in our country. I'll be talking about how then do we thank them a little later. So what then, from the Deputy Vice Chancellor, to me is God's business. It wasn't really mine. I became the Vice Chancellor after Professor Gishaga. And then I decided to use the two guys as effectively as is possible. Hence that story you have heard of the three musketeers, TEAM, KEEP, and myself, to really not only change University of Nairobi, but provide the guidance to other universities about the future and the way planning strategically for the institutions. The leading institutions in Kenya is fundamental to the institutions, not only per se, but indeed for the nation to learn from. We challenged our business school. That's when actually they started the strategic the planning department or section. And fortunately, KEEP was also a member of that school. Although TEAM was in the business of ICTs and the like, he is really an expert of everything. And I say that without any fear, or is it contradiction, TEAM? He has been very useful to the University of Nairobi. Indeed, I found him so as the Vice Chancellor. We worked very closely. And then, again, as fate would have it, somebody called Emilio Mwai Wakibaki became Kenya's president. He still asked me to continue a bit as the Vice Chancellor. I moved over to the Commission for University Education briefly. And then he appointed me as the permanent secretary to establish the Ministry of Science and Technology, which we did. And the second tenure, the ministry became the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology. And that is when we discovered, even in the greater Kenya, there are actually no strategies of science technology, no strategies of simple things that are critical. And you remember also the Economic and Social Council was established by the president at the same time, which he also appointed me as a member of the Economic and Social Council. That was the parent of the Vision 2030 that was mentioned by our great friend, James Mwangi, the chief executive, and many other things for Equity Bank. He didn't mention something very important, the Wings to Fly scholarship program. To me, one of the most interesting and innovative programs to get Kenyans educated. Because of the Wings to Fly, especially now in collaboration with the likes of MasterCard Foundation, is making incredible work in our country and is being emulated. In fact, now the bank, not the bank, the foundation, which you work with, the MasterCard Foundation, is almost making it a global program, which is really because it was started here by our good friend, James Mwangi. So I requested the same musketeers to start work to do the entire strategic thinking and plan of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology. And by then, you remember there was also the, just like now, slightly in a little different way, discussions on a new way of Kenya growing, and hence a new structure, 2010 was established. The same players today seems to be the same players then. Ruto was the key opponent of the structures then that were supposed to be in place. And by a stroke of I don't know what, he was also my minister. And the winning of that, remember, by Kibaki, and beginning of the new constitution of 2010 was critical to changing Kenya. And some of us were quite active in that. So that strategic plan we had was to be sensitive to the new era of Kenya, and also to be utilized where possible by other universities. So we formed a team that then developed the whole rethinking of higher education in Kenya. Secondly, the whole thinking of science, technology, innovation in Kenya. And very closely related, the middle level TVET education in Kenya. And we developed a huge document and strategic thinking. And then we were challenged to in turn also generate the laws that would be passed before Mwai Kibaki gets out of office. Hence the new laws of universities education of 2013, the new laws of higher education, science and technology, the acts of parliament, the TVET, and so forth. And all of that really I owe to Tim, to Kip, and a number of other people we got together to do that. There are indications there is need even to continually relook at that. It is possible Tim and Kip may be called back. Perhaps the Three Musketeers, God knows. So that is really the team that to a great extent changed how universities tend to do their work. Is reflected in the current Universities Act. Universities are presently literally declared by the head of financing in Kenya as almost bankrupt. So the time is ripe again now to re-examine exactly how they are doing business, how they should do business. And a lot can be learned, obviously, from what is happening in very, shall I say, institutions, even in our country, that are really making a lot of moves that are changing the country. Equity Bank Group is one of them. Recently, I actually saw Equity Hospital also has been started. I think that was mentioned. And universities collaborating with a lot of other global institutions, the Harvards, the Cambridges, the Oxfords, really to ensure the best education is given to Kenyans. It is possible, and as sometimes we hear in politics, yanawezekana, but people will need to work hard all across the board to get that done. So the coming out of this book is such an opportune moment for Kenya totally. And I was supposed to give a vote of thanks. That introduction is too long, but what do you expect when you get a teacher to stand? I start with Dr. James Mwangi. We are very grateful, the authors of this book, and indeed everybody else who is here, for coming to be the chief guests and give the keynote statements that you gave today. James Mwangi is appreciated in Kenya at so many levels. What we have heard from you today can only make us better, all of us who were here. We wish you every best in what you are up to. Definitely continue utilizing the best resources that are in Kenya to make Equity bigger and better, by in turn making Kenya bigger and better. We look forward, certainly some of us who are still in the academic areas, to work very closely with you. We notice Professor Macharia, professor who is the chairman of that organization, is a member of the University of Nairobi. Professor Tim Wema, who is a member of the board, is also a member of the University of Nairobi. To me, that is a lesson other institutions in Kenya can learn, utilizing resources in our universities that are there. And until we utilize them, I can assure you our other institutions, whether financial, health, whatever the case, really we may not make as fast progress as we can as a nation. We have incredible capacity. Let us utilize it. It is available. Dr. James Mwangi, for providing the leadership in that approach. You're greatly appreciated. For writing some of the, you wrote from the notes I have, the forward of the book, the authors and all of us really appreciate for you to do that. And as I've said, for being the chief guest. Finally, with respect to Dr. James Mwangi, you gave this function your entire bank to come literally and support the happenings today. The bank's marketing and PR team are all here. They've been working with the others to prepare today, and I think most of them are still there. James, we thank you very much for that generosity and commitment to support a team that got together to write a book on strategy. Julius Kimngetich, you are the second on my notes, Kip, as we just call him. He also wrote acknowledgement. The authors really appreciated that. Being also the moderator of this function. And as you have seen, why he's seen as one of the best teachers in the University of Nairobi, maybe in Kenya. You have seen it today, his approach. Thank you very much, Kip. We pray the good Almighty continues to support you doing those good things. As Swahili say, tunakuombea na Mungu akupatie mema yote unahitaji. If you don't know Swahili, just talk to the person next to you. They will let you know what I have said. The KPMG representative who is here, Gerard Kasimo, is sitting somewhere. There he is. We want to thank you from KPMG. You are part of this discussion panel, and the contribution to the discussion, the contribution to all these issues of strategy making and related matters is greatly appreciated. Asante sana. We also wish you every best. I'm sure you will continue working closely with the second volume of this book. Team, I'm informed the second volume is expected as soon as possible. The Equity Bank is not only as I said, the chief executive who was here alone. The team that was here was led by Alex Muhia and Lydia Kiburu. Just wherever you are, we thank you very much. Maybe you can just, I don't know whether, don't salute me, I'm not head of, yes. I just wanted the team to see you where you are. We really appreciate what you have done to ensure that this function takes place and so successfully. Other members in that team were Jage Kabugu, Georgette Kirega, Elizabeth Mururi, Dorcas Warenga, and the awesome technical team. That is what team thinks you are as a team. Awesome. I don't know where you are, but just do that and wave to everybody wherever you are from Equity Bank and whatever role you are playing. Asante sana. Let's thank you for giving them that applause. It is said you coordinated very many activities, and the event has turned out to be great because of your professional touch, which has turned out to be incredibly amazing. Asante sana again. We have a team from the USA. It's led by Nicole McDowell, and team members are Davina Ware and Mackenzie Bruce. Your excellent work on the book website, the videos, social media issues has made all the difference to the authors. If that team is here also, just wave your hands, please. If they're in the US, I'm told where they are, they will do that also. Thank you very much, that team, for assisting Tim and his team also. There's also a team somewhere in UAE, United Arab Emirates in Middle East, Krista Fox. There's also Padraig Berry from Ireland in Europe. There is Dr. Patrick Mutisia, that one is from Kenya. Then Jerry Su from China. They have also written forwards to this book and all acknowledgements for the same book, and for recording a testimonial video which was played at the beginning of the event. Those persons, individually and collectively, we thank you enormously for your support to ensure that this today's function is well and we have a book. The next person is Nick. And because his name looked a little strange, I requested, can it be written in a way I can understand? Not in Kikamba, but in a way I can understand. And it's Nick Voyi Chich. Forgive me if I did not pronounce it correctly. But your story is a global story. You're talking to us here is so encouraging. It's very encouraging. Your capacity and your character to walk around the globe encouraging everybody is incredible. Your being here, to say the least, is a blessing to this book team. You've been here to launch it, and you have many other international engagements. We understand there were some issues about transport because of one of the airports in Europe. I'm not sure whether it was because of the war or just typical problems. But you still managed to come here. Team at one time was a little doubtful whether you make it. So we really appreciate your coming all this way to talk to Kenyans and to the world. We wish you the very best. You have made some promises, I can assure you. We will follow them up. Yes. Our ears were wide open. And since Tim had prepared a page on him here, and I would like to suggest, Tim, if that page you can circulate it, it needs to be read. It needs to be read by our children. We all need to read it, just to see what commitment and love for humanity can do to the same humanity, what we learned from you, Nick. God be with you, wherever is your next move, but we will continue seeking out, definitely looking for you. The authors are not here alone. They are actually accompanied by their wives. Ask them, don't your wives have names? I know Rosa, I've seen her here. Rosa, thank you very much. She's there just, I wish you did this, Rosa. Rosa is wife to Tim, a great couple who I know very well. Then we have Pam. Is Pam here or wherever she is? US. Okay. You, Pam, is wherever you are, I'm sure she can hear. Then we have Jackie. Jackie is there. The authors have said, I thank you at least profusely for the support you have given to your spouses I wanted to say to your darlings to ensure that this book is finished. We are the beneficiaries of that behavior. We also thank you very much, the three of you. Continue supporting these really great human beings. What they are doing is good, not only for them, for their families, for their nations. It's actually global. I will not be surprised if this book published today will not be in some of the best-selling authors very soon, Tim. The other persons attending this function virtually or face-to-face, thank you very much for coming to participate. You spared your time for perhaps very important functions, duties, and responsibilities. Some of those who are out there, perhaps it's still in the morning, or perhaps it's in the evening or in the night. You've participated in the event. The authors do not take your time for granted at all. None of us indeed do that. We thank you and wish you every best. Members of the fourth estates, is usually the journalists, and all these guys who then report what has been happening. For covering this event today, the authors are very grateful. We are all very grateful. We thank you. And for accepting to continue engaging on the book. The fourth estate in Kenya, you have an incredible group of people who can really assist our country. Ensure you give them the best. These are my words, by the way, not the others. Give them the best featuring as possible and let the Kenyans and related institutions know that. Crown Plaza is this hotel. It has hosted the event. We have enjoyed the venue. We are still enjoying it. And what you are prepared for us, maybe we are still to see more what has been prepared. But whatever the case, we are very grateful to the hotel. It's a great place to hold conferences, meetings, and they have continued that very important function, Crown Plaza. Asante sana. I was requested to also say, so where do they go from here, or where do we go from here? The first ones, where can you find this book, ladies and gentlemen? Amazon. We all know Amazon, perhaps the largest publisher globally, that facilitated by using digital age. You can QR code on the issues or roll-up banners. You can access it from that point of view literally for free. Alternatively, you can also go to the online site of the Amazon. It's also there. You can get a copy of at the registration desk today. I think Kip had already started talking about that. At a heavily discounted price. The figures I have here is at 1,000 Kenya shillings for a maximum of 3 copies. That is literally free. That is instead of $20 or Kenya shillings 2,400. In the US, it's available in the book stores in North America already. That is probably courtesy of the Kenyan American who is the TR. He's here, Ivan. At the airports, the book is already available. At that famous, but then I'm being selfish when I say this, at that famous bookshop, the University of Nairobi bookshop, it will be available. And the authors, just get in touch with them. They will facilitate your access of the book. There are a number of versions of the book. There's the hardcore. You have seen some copies of hardcore. There is the electronic, as I have said, the Amazons and the like. There's an audio and also available in Kindle. So the book is available in many fora. And what is the way forward then? What should we expect from the authors apart from this book? It seems, and you see why these guys really, one can say, are incredible. The following are some of the things that the authors have planned. A, 4 assessment tools. If you have started reading the book, you start seeing what are those tools. The one is preparing for strategy assessment. 2, strategy execution assessment. 3, optimizing strategy assessment. And 4, complete strategy readiness assessment. Readiness, you can also say preparedness. The assessment tool number 1, which is the preparing for strategy assessment, is ready and available on the website. Feel free to get the senior leadership in your organizations, institutions, perhaps even families, to really read this book and take the assessment. If that happens, the authors, all for free, will do the following. They are promising: analyze the data, prepare a report on your organization's or your institution's readiness for strategy, and then they will schedule a debrief session for the first 2 organizations that complete the assessment. That will all be done for free. So if your organization, you are really keen on it, you can be the first one to get some free something. The other 3 assessments will be available soon. Then there are 13 online strategy training modules that will be communicated to you. There are very many. The team was just telling me there are actually 13. Appraisal of the external environment, developing strategic partnerships, assessing the internal environment, creative strategic thinking, and so forth. There are really many. Take advantage of this. The first module, which is the developing the foundations of strategy, is almost ready and will be uploaded onto the book website within the next few weeks. And the other modules are scheduled to be released within a period of 12 months. As I conclude this session, I was really touched by the initials VUCA, which is the vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of matters strategic thinking, strategic planning. And there is that readiness assessment. A draft of this assessment is ready. So the speakers are here. They can allow you to access it if it is online, or indeed if it is published in any other way, you will get to know. All these products will be announced in the book website, and all you need to do is just Google the title of this book and you will automatically move to that site. And due to this, they have been enrolled for on optimizing strategy for resort newsletter. There is that newsletter that is also there, and will be containing updates and announcements among other components. Ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the vote of thanks and what is to come, that's really more or less it. For me, it was a great morning from great friends. But I finish with the words of our great friend here, who has said he can work with us as a country. And he said he has had a dream about Kenya. I want to interpret it as a dream about Africa. I would like to suggest we take it seriously and engage ourselves with him and any other people who think there are very interesting things on the way for Kenya and for Africa. I thank all of you. Thank you very much, Tim.
One final thing is the signing of the book. So I would like to invite now James and the authors here. Please take your positions. They will issue a few books. The rest of you, You are now free to leave. I know most of you are pressed for time, so we'll do the two events simultaneously. If you want a book, it's here. It's going to be signed by the authors. Just a small correction. I know Professor Kiamba said 1,000 bob, but we need to give back to society. So we have revised the price to 2,000. We must give back. Thank you. So proceed. Thank you very much.